Hello, this is JTH,
Mr. Tell Zero.
and we are starting Chapter 4 of
By,
Silent Ponyville 2.
by the way, Super Bombs is awake.
Yeah. Also, I saw one person who thought that our 200th video special was going to be Twilust. It would have been if the fanfic was not on hiatus.
Yeah, it's on a hiatus right now, so...
And for the love of God, I hope he does not cancel it.
Well, he probably won't. He's probably just having, whatever.
But anyways, here we go. Chapter 4 of Silent Ponyville 2. And off the record, these chapters don't have names. They're just called Chapter 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth.
I want a burger. I want a burger.
Fluttershy let out a soft sigh as she lay on the floor of the examination room. A towel was draped over her head as she breathed slowly, trying to calm herself down and feel better. She had redressed her wounds. Her cuts had reopened in the water and were slowly healing again. Her muscles still ached, though the health drinks helped a lot. Her shivering had gone away as well, a sign her body temperature was returning to normal. She had made a makeshift fire with some leftover gauze and bandages, using a small bit of lantern oil to help it burn. The fire had provided a gentle comfort, warming her body and calming her mind as the flames danced before her. It wouldn't last for long, but it was serving its purpose. She had hung her bag to help it dry quicker, as well as getting all the water out of the music box. She was surprised she hadn't lost the doll key in the watery mess, though the map of Ponyville hadn't fared as well. It was drying as well, though it wouldn't ever be quite the same. I wonder what Rainbow Dash and Pinkie Pie are doing right now. Fluttershy asked herself, staring into the flames. She was feeling lonely without her friends, and she started to worry about their safety. This place wasn't welcoming. Already she had brushed with death twice. Both times had been safe thanks to Rainbow Dash. Rainbow Dash, she muttered, quickly closing her eyes to think about her mare friend. This is it. This is my chance, Rainbow Dash squealed happily as she held up a poster to Fluttershy. The Wonderbolts will be having open auditions in 3 months. This is the first time they've ever done this. Apparently they've been so amazed at the talent of the upcoming flyers that they want to see and personally invite the best to join the best of their team. Rainbow Dash let out another squeal as she was practically dancing for joy. That's wonderful, Rainbow Dash, Fluttershy cheered happily for her. You'll finally be able to make your dream come true. I know. Oh, I'm going to have to pick up my practice sessions. This is going to have to call for some new tricks, too. Tricks no pony has ever thought of. The most death-defying and out-of-this-world tricks any pony has ever seen. Rainbow Dash instantly contemplated anything and everything she could do. You shouldn't forget about using the Sonic Rainboom either. You're the only pony in all of Equestria who can perform it. They let you in for sure after they see that, Fluttershy happily said. Rainbow Dash stopped her musing when Fluttershy said that, lowering a hoof she had raised eagerly to the ground. The Sonic Rainboom, huh? Rainbow scuffed her hoof again against the ground, looking a little anxious. What's the matter? Fluttershy asked, knowing an instant change in behavior. Change in behavior. Well, to be honest, I haven't been able to perform the Sonic Rainboom since the Best Young Flyers competition. Rainbow Dash seemed to grimace at her mentioning failing to do a move. Really? Do you not remember how to perform it? It's not that I forgot how I did it. Just for the same reason things seem to get too real just as I'm about to perform it. The ground gets too close and I start to panic about not controlling my speed or think that it must be something to perform only on critical occasions or... Rainbow Dash's frantic rant was interrupted when Fluttershy's lips found their way to Rainbow's. Rainbow's face lit up in a blush at this. I know you can do it, Rainbow Dash. I believe in you. Fluttershy smiled warmly at her mare friend.
He's going to the bathroom, I bet. Sorry, Bombs just had to leave the room.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Well, I suppose I can always give it another try, Dash said, grinning as she blushed heavily. She spread her wings and shot into the sky at a mighty speed. Fluttershy smiled as she watched her, always loving the way Rainbow flew. Rainbow perched herself high up on a cloud overlooking the world. With a quick breath, she sprang into the air once more, flying around as she began to pick up momentum. Fluttershy watched her fly around, realizing Dash was getting a feel for the air first.
Why not just go higher if you need to get speed?
Before Rainbow Dash stopped high up in the air, almost invisible against the sun. Then she saw the descent. Rainbow was racing straight for the ground at a tremendous speed. Fluttershy watched in anticipation as she could see Rainbow begin to form the cone of air around her body. Fluttershy almost held her breath. For a moment, it seemed Rainbow hesitated. Fluttershy could see the change in her flight. She put a hoof to her mouth out of hesitation that she might go flying backwards as she had so many times before. But at the last moment, it seemed a last-ditch determination fired in her eyes. Her body stretched forward, and suddenly... BOOM!
Ow.
Sorry. A huge explosion ripped through the sky, a circle of color spreading out as the rainbow shot towards the ground, turning right before it would happen with the impact of the ground and rocketing into the sky, spreading a giant rainbow across the sky. Fluttershy cheered, jumping up and down at the amazing sight. Wait a moment. An explosion. Fluttershy's head popped up from where it had been laying on her hooves. The one that woke me up earlier. It sounded a lot like the sonic rain boom. Now she was worried. What reason could Dash have for doing the sonic rain boom here? Unless... Oh no. Was Dash being chased by the dragon again? Fluttershy's heart started pounding. She could be hurt, or trapped, or worse. Her heart lodged in her throat as she stood up quickly, shaking her head, trying to clear her mind as her towel fell to the floor. No, I can't think that way. Rainbow Dash is okay. And I'm sure Pinkie Pie is too. I just have to find them. Fluttershy looked at what remained of the fire before her. It was flickering with its last embers. It would die out very soon. Okay, I should be dry enough and my things should be dry enough as well. It's time for me to find a way out of here. I have to find my friends. Fluttershy quickly placed her things back into the slightly damp bag. She made sure to pack up some extra gauze, bandages, and health drinks as well, making sure she have more medical supplies with her should anything happen along the way. This would have to do for now, and she closed it back up and placing it on her back. She then returned the lantern to around her neck and turned it on, making sure it still worked, before walking out into the hallway. Oh god, she's in trouble. Instantly, the music box began to hiss and wail with the sound of buzzing bees as the air seemed to become thick. Fluttershy instantly had to struggle for breath as it felt like the air itself was pressing down hard against her body, trying to strangle the life out of her. Her body felt almost frozen as the pressure like it was trying to crush her body. Her head slowly turned, looking down the hallway from where it felt like the pressure was emanating. Is it the Slender Pony?
Maybe.
Her eyes grew wide as her pupils shrunk and she could only see two piercing red eyes staring back at her. It was a tall pony-like creature, one that easily overpowered her. Its body was covered in darkness that seemed to flow and crawl all around it, almost like dancing flames. As she stared at her, its mouth began to open, revealing white mouth in stark contrast to its black body, its jagged, sharp teeth bared for her to see.
Nice.
It was grinning at her. Wait a minute. There was a dark creature with red eyes and jagged teeth in Fluttershy's nightmare at the beginning of the fanfic.
Mm-hmm.
This must be the creature. It began to walk towards her, each step echoing with a loud thud through the hallway. As it drew closer, the air grew thicker, and its presence seemed to crush her further, the very air pressing down on her, making her legs shake and her breathing stop as her heart pounded heavily in her chest. As it grew closer, word began to echo through Fluttershy's mind. Pain. This creature would bring her pain. She had to run from it, she had to get away, but her hooves felt glued in place. Pain. Pain. Pain, 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 pain.
Lots of pains.
Yes, and the last few is written in red letters.
Blood.
Why couldn't she run? She had to run. She was going to die if she didn't run, but she was paralyzed by fear. Fear of what? The wrath of this creature? That's what she had to run away from. I need you to be strong right now, alright? Fluttershy's mind snapped back into reality, instantly turning on her hooves and running as fast as she could. That had to be Rainbow Dash's voice she heard. She was finally able to get the air back into her lungs as she quickly ran past the doors around her. The hallway wasn't quickly coming to an end, though. And before she could see the staircase to the second floor, she couldn't stop running now. She had to run. Her hooves hit heavily against each step as she ran up the stairs. She seemed to be getting farther away from the creature. The air was breathable, and she wasn't feeling the soul-crushing presence. The music box was slowly growing more quiet. She reached the top of the stairs, panting as she took in the stale air. The world still smelled of mildew and rotting materials. But it was better than being in that creature's presence. She began to walk down the hallway of the second floor, where the music box suddenly began to hiss again. She stopped in her tracks, expecting that black creature to appear before her, but slowly coming into view of her lantern wasn't the black creature. It looked like a nurse. It was wearing a standard Cloudsdale hospital nurse uniform, a pink hat with a red cross and a pink coat that fit well around her body, but had just ended just short of a flank so her cutie mark could be seen. With white stockings on the hind legs and special made hoof sandals to keep their steps quiet for patients.
Zambi.
However, that's where the similarities ended, for the face of the nurse was covered in bandages hiding its eyes and face, but around its mouth was a metal muzzle with holes for air, but it looked like it had been placed to keep the creature quiet. Its uniform was covered in spots of blood as if it had attacked something, while its white tail seemed spotless. But most striking of all was what was around its neck and what looked like a black necklace of living flames, as if it had come from the body of the creature from before. The music box began to hiss louder as the creature grew closer. Her head looked back and forth, looking for a way out that didn't involve going back the way she came. Her eyes fell upon the double doors just in front of her to her right. She jumped at the doors and pressed on them, praying they were open. The door swung open as she ran inside, closing the door behind her. The hissing of the music box died down as she could still tell the creature was nearby outside the door. She hoped it wouldn't come breaking the door down, but she realized she had just set herself up in a trapped room. She had jumped into what looked like a supplies closet. However, most of the supplies had fallen from this world's rotten despair. Disrepair, whatever. Moths flew around the ceiling of the room, as she could smell blood in the air and couldn't see any. She looked around, seeing if there was anything she could use to possibly hide her from the creature behind the door away from her. Something glinted against the glare of her lantern on one of the shelves. Huh? She slowly walked over toward the glint of light. It was an orange gemstone in the shape of an eye. It was the only thing in the entire room that hadn't fallen into a state of rotting. In fact, it looked pristine, as if it had been taken care of while everything else fell apart. Something about the gem drew Fluttershy to it, as if it was hypnotizing. The jewel itself seemed to be watching her. She gulped down her beating heart and placed the gem carefully in her bag. She'd hold on to it. She felt as if it was important. She slowly walked back over to the door and placed her ear against it, trying to hear anything. The hissing of the music box had gone silent, and she didn't hear anything past the door. She opened the door carefully, peeking outside and looking around. The nurse had left. It didn't seem like it had tried to chase after her and break the door down. Fluttershy let out a soft sigh in relief, realizing this. She exited the supply room and continued down the hallway from the direction the nurse had come. She felt very strongly about not returning the way she had just come from. Moving forward was her only option now.
Mm-hmm.
Fluttershy looked around carefully at the doors in the hallway. Many had been boarded up with wooden planks nailed to frames, making sure no one could enter or exit the rooms. Many looked like they had been sealed with some kind of building material. Others just looked like the locks had handles, had been broken for ages, and wouldn't open. The hallway ended abruptly with a turn, Fluttershy turning with it to continue down the hall. Something immediately struck her eyes as she walked down the hall. She drew closer to it to get a better look at it, when she stopped and stared in surprise. The wall opposite the doors was a giant mural of Princess Celestia. She was facing the pony, looking at the mural, with the hoof raised and her wings spread out with an imposing look about her. Above the mural in large letters looked like a quote she had said once. "Life is the right of every pony. May we all bask in the light together." Fluttershy blinked in awe at the mural. She had never seen it before, not in all the years she had been in the hospital at least. Not to mention, something struck her odd about the mural, as if something was missing. Her eyes. Her eyes were missing. In their place were indentations in the wall, looking as if something was supposed to be placed inside of them. That gem she found.
Mm-hmm.
Fluttershy carefully pulled the orange stone she had found out of the supply closet and carefully fitted it into the right eye socket. The stone fit with a click and stayed in place. Now Celestia was only missing one eye. It was likely that the other eye was somewhere in the hospital.
I hate puzzle games.
Suddenly, the note on the front desk made sense to her. They had locked away the other eye somewhere because Celestia's staring was judging them, as if the mural itself could see something that they didn't want it to see. Fluttershy put a hoof to her chin. "So I have to find where they locked the other gem away. The only hint I have is the word hide." Fluttershy looked around the dark hallway once more before quickly sitting back down the way she was headed. She looked even closer at the doors now, looking for any door that might have some sort of keypad or be open for her to check to see if it would reveal some kind of locked item. Even after another turn in the hallway, none of the doors revealed any answers, before opening up to another staircase heading back down to the first floor. She treaded carefully, expecting another creature to start heading for her as if she wasn't careful. The world remained quiet, though. As she came upon the hallway, she recognized from when she was a filly. It was the testing wing of the hospital, one she remembered frequently when her mother as she was getting help. In a quiet nostalgia, she began to check some of the doors in the hallway. One door opened for her as she walked inside. "Mother!" came the voice of a little filly. Fluttershy stepped back in shock as she looked at what was happening before her. A ghostly version of her mother was laying on a bed in the room, as a filly version of herself ran up happily next to her bedside. So she's having a flashback?
Mm-hmm.
"Fluttershy, you came to visit again," her mother chuckled, happily leaning down to pick up the little filly, hugging her close as she lay in the bed. "Of course, Mother. You know I'll always visit you," Fluttershy chuckled happily as her mother's hair tickled her. "When are you coming home, Mother? I miss you." As soon as the doctors finished their testing today, her mother smiled happily. "Really?" Fluttershy's face lit up happily. "Really," her mother chuckled as her daughter happily at her daughter's enthusiasm. "They said unless it's serious, I can head home today since I'll have your father at home to take care of me. We're so lucky to have him," she smiled. "That's the best doctor in the whole world. He'll make you all better in no time," Fluttershy smiled happily. "Indeed he will," Fluttershy's mother smiled happily before turning her head and coughing into a hoof away from her daughter. "You really should be resting," came a deeper voice. The two girls turned to see an older Pegasus with a doctor's coat walk into the room. "Daddy!" Fluttershy smiled happily. "Hello, dear," her mother smiled happily. "Hello, you two." He smiled and walked closer. "How are you feeling today?" Better. My stay here has helped, but I'm eager to get home and be with my little one, her mother said, smiling and rubbing Fluttershy's head happily. You'll be resting there too, you know. You may feel better but you're not cured yet. But we'll find the cure. Don't you worry, her father smiled. He looked tired. He hadn't gotten a good night's sleep in a long while. I know I will, dear. We'll be a happy family again before too long, her mother said happily before the images faded away.
Let me see. Her mother's been coughing a lot, correct?
Yeah.
She coughed, and in another one of the flashbacks, she coughed up blood, I think, right?
Yeah.
I think it's tuberculosis.
Maybe. Fluttershy didn't know what to make of the images after they had gone from the room and returned to the state of decay that the rest of the hospital was in. The furniture and cloth was destroyed and old, with the smell of mildew hitting her nose. Mother, Fluttershy said quietly. She remembered that memory now, though when she had tried to remember it before it was hazy. Now it was coming in clear as should be. She wondered why, what reason her memories would have for hiding her mother till they showed up like this. She took a closer look at the room, but nothing else seemed to pop out at her. She frowned a little, hoping she'd find a little more to remember, but it didn't seem like she'd be offered any. She slowly turned back to the door and walked out into the hallway. She let out a soft sigh as she tried to gather her thoughts and try to calm down. She walked further down the hall before her eyes caught sight of a sign that was lit up above the doors. The sign read, ER. The emergency room. She hesitated for a moment. She hadn't been in the ER section of the hospital before, and she was worried about what she would find. However, she gulped down her fears and quickly entered the double doors. She looked around, not seeing any creatures, but the scent of blood caught her nose. She looked down the ground until she saw a trail of blood leading down the ER's hallway, as if something had dragged a pony's body down it. Her gut told her that following the trail was the right way to go, but she dreaded what she would find. Dreading what she would find, she didn't want it to be a bleeding corpse. With another gulp, she began to follow the trail of blood. The trail led her under a door at the end of a hallway, a door that looked like it was used for surgery.
I fucking hate ERs. Like, I had to take my grandfather to the ER once because of his hernia. We got there at 11 at night. Guess how long it took them to see him? 4 in the fucking morning.
4 in the morning?
I cursed the son of a bitch out.
Wow.
I said, do you have nothing to do but sit on your lazy fat fucking ass? My grandfather's been in pain all night, you fucking prick bastard.
Wow, what did he say?
He didn't say anything, but I got yelled at by my aunt and uncle for it.
Wow.
I got pissed. I was pissed.
It looked like it was used for surgery. She carefully pushed the door open, walking into the room.
I got pissed, I'm sorry.
It was indeed a room for surgery. Torn apart privacy curtains hung from the rusted metal rails. The window for observation was broken on one side of the room. A tray filled with rusted medical items lay near a broken table. Various machines and devices lay in various pieces around the room. The disinfecting sink was coated with a layer of blood.
Nice.
The blood trail ended in the middle of the room, leading to a large pool of blood that lay just underneath the surgical table.
Yeah.
On top of the table was a wooden blood-stained box with a padlock in it. The padlock had a dial for turning numbers to open it. Fluttershy carefully walked up to the box and examined it before noticing a bit of extra blood on the table that had been formed into wounds.
Words.
Turn the letters into numbers. Numbers, I guess he meant to say. Unless that's part of a riddle. The last word smudged, but it had all been written in blood. She was surprised it wasn't all more smudged. She carefully placed the hoof against the padlock and looked at the 4 dials. Each dial went from 1 to 9, creating a 4-digit number code to unlock the box. That note said that code was the word hide. She turned the words to hear something. Turn the letters. Fluttershy thought quietly for a moment, trying to get what her brain meant. Suddenly it seemed to come to her. She placed the hoof against the dial and began to turn the numbers. 9, 8, 9, 4, 5. She said aloud. She turned the numbers to what she thought must be the right combination. The padlock clicked, releasing its iron grip on the wooden box. Fluttershy smiled happily at her own ingenious before carefully moving the padlock aside to open the box.
Rusty medical tools. I would have grabbed something as a weapon just to take with me, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like what, a rusty knife?
Anything sharp, anything that I could use as a weapon. Even a broken computer that I could just crack somebody over the head with. Anything.
Inside she saw what she expected, the other gem that was Celestia's eye, though it was the one of the dark shade of blue, instead of orange than the other eye was. Fluttershy carefully put the jewel inside of her bag, ready to leave this surgical room. She turned and exited the room, only to be met with the loud hissing of her music box once more.
Oh boy.
Her head instantly looked down the hallway, seeing the same kind of nurse heading toward her, blocking off the path of the hallway. Fluttershy looked around, not sure of what to do, not wanting to get attacked but having nowhere to run. She did the only thing that she could do and pressed herself up against the wall. With that, she very slowly began to walk towards the nurse, hoping the nurse would ignore her and let her slip by. The nurse had turned to snap and look at Fluttershy, which had almost side by side by it. Fluttershy stopped in her tracks as the nurse stopped as well. The nurse seemed to be staring at Fluttershy through its bandaged face. Fluttershy couldn't see the eyes, but she knew they were staring deeply at her. Fluttershy stared back in return, as if she could feel a cold sweat beginning to form on her forehead. The two of them were in a standoff. Fluttershy did not want to be the first pony to make a move. The tension was thick, only cut by the hissing of the music box telling Fluttershy that she was in danger. The nurse finally but slowly turned its head away from Fluttershy, walking past her, heading for the surgical room Fluttershy had just left from. Fluttershy let out a soft sigh from the air she had just been holding from the tension. The nurse turned around instantly as it suddenly let out a wailing, ear-piercing cry. Fluttershy jumped running out of the ER and into the hall as fast as she could. She turned down the testing hallway, running straight for the stairs to the second floor when her music box hissed even louder as she hit a wall of thick air that squeezed down her as if trying to suffocate her.
Oh boy.
She skidded to a stop as her whole body felt terror. The dark creature was standing before her once more. It roared as its white mouth opened, its jagged teeth coming down swiftly. Fluttershy's instinct reacted as she raised her hoof to defend herself. The jagged teeth bored down into her leg, and Fluttershy let out a scream in agony as her flesh was on fire. The creature twisted its head before quickly snapping it back, picking up and tossing Fluttershy by her leg. Fluttershy slammed into a wall, the air escaping her lungs as pain soared through her.
That's why you grab a weapon. Not like it's gonna help, but still, it could do something.
But wait a minute, I think this creature is made of pure darkness. Nothing can hurt it.
There's always a way to defeat something, whether it be, fire, a knife, even, an ancient dagger. There's always a way to kill something.
She coughed and gagged on the thick air as the dark creature was beginning to walk closer to her, wanting to strike out once more.
Damn.
Fluttershy scrambled to her legs, her injured legs slipping, causing her to crash face first into the floor, listening another yelp as her bruised face was struck. She managed to turn her head and look at the creature through blurry, tear-filled eyes. It was drawing too close. She had to escape. She had to get up and run. Instinct struck again as her wings spread out and she flapped on, desperately trying to pick her body up and get away. Get away quickly. She had to get back to the mural of Celestia. Jagged teeth bored down onto her wing. Fluttershy screamed even louder than she had before, her sensitive wing being punctured in several places. The dark creature twisted its head again, though this time a loud crack was heard as the bone in her wing snapped.
There you go.
Fluttershy's body flailed once more as her screams echoed through the hallway. The dark creature let go of the maimed wing, seeming to grin happily at its accomplishment. Please don't tell me Fluttershy's gonna die.
They wouldn't kill her off, and especially the stories about her.
As tears streamed down her face, her legs finally found traction. She put all of her strength in and focused into running, wanting nothing more than to put distance between her and the dark creature. Her vision was blurred with pain and tears, making it hard to see where she was going. She smacked into the end of the hallway, crying as pain shot through her body of the force of the impact. She shakily looked down the hallway, seeing the blurry outline of the dark creature heading straight for her, continuing its slow pace. It walks just like a serial killer.
That's great. That's awesome.
Like Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers.
Freddy runs, but still, it's you know, it's heart wrenching. My heart's beating. So right now, it's like this is getting good. I'm liking it.
That's the one question that always puzzled me about them. You know, with like Jason and Michael.
Yeah.
If their victims are running, why are they walking?
It's horror. Horror. It makes no sense anymore.
They should run if they're running.
That's
She reached her good hoof out in front of her and found a door before her. With haste, she opened it, stumbling out. She quickly blinked, whirling her head around. She was on the other side of the lobby. She knew where she was. She could go through the other door and make it up the stairs. Then she could get to the mural. Her music box had yet to cease its hissing as a figure came into her blurry vision. Fluttershy turned around, only looking back to see the blurry outline of the nurse that had been walking towards her.
Grr.
She tripped against the receptionist's chair that lay scattered behind the desk. She didn't have time to let the pain settle in. She had to get back up. She scrambled back to her feet and reached the other door. Then when she entered the hallway to the patient's room, another ear-piercing wail cried out. Fluttershy turned just barely in time to see a nurse raised up on her hind legs as the front legs came rushing straight for her. Fluttershy felt her hooves strike her face, and she was sent tumbling back into the wall. She panted as she got back up and tried to look around. She could no longer see out of one eye. Only half of the world came to her vision. She could make out the image of the nurse walking towards her, barely even giving her time to realize she'd been hit. Fluttershy pushed off against the wall and ran past the nurse wailing as at her as she ran by. She could barely see. Her hoof hit the staircase with a thud, sending her face first into the stairs once more. Her head was throbbing so much that she wasn't even sure what was happening to her body anymore. She only knew she had to get up and keep running. She had to get to the mural. It was her way out. It had to be her way out. She climbed the stairs to the second floor. She wasn't even sure how long she did it, but she managed it. She kept running. She wasn't even sure how she was keeping up the pace with her body, but her legs were running. She made it down the second turn of the hallway, and the blurry image of the mural was in her sight. She ran straight for it, skidding to a stop right before it. The music box let out a loud hiss as the air began to feel thick. Fluttershy reached into her bag and pulled out the blue eye. As the air began to feel like it was pressing down on her, going to crush her body, she fumbled with the eye, fumbling to put it into the right slot. It nearly fell from her hooves. She shifted it hastily into place. She couldn't breathe. The air and the pressure was too strong. She swore she could feel breath on the back of her neck as the blue gem clicked into place. The two gems let out a bright light as a loud cry came from her side. The mural began to move, disappearing into the wall. In its place was another dark hallway. Fluttershy ran for it. She ran through the hallway, ran away from the pressure and the thick air. It was chasing her. The creature was following her down the long hallway. Her chest was once more on fire, but she couldn't stop. An office opened up at the end of the hallway. A simple office, a desk, a filing cabinet, chairs, office space. Fluttershy crashed into the desk, throwing her hooves over as she panted in desperation. Her vision was impaired so much now she could only make the outline of the furniture in the office. The air grew thick once more as she turned her head in fear, watching the dark creature as it was drawing closer. Its blood-covered white smile and jagged teeth shone under its red, glaring eyes. She couldn't see anything but its face. Her breath sounded loud. Her panting was as loud as the beating of her heart in her ears. There was no escaping it this time. The mural had led her to a dead end. There was no escape now. Her vision was filled with the dark creature. It was going to kill her. She would die here with her friends. She would die here, and her friends would never know what happened to her. She muttered an apology under her breath as her face continued to be drenched with tears. The creature was upon her, and her breath stopped. The pressure of the creature's presence was enough to feel like it would stop her heart. It opened its mouth and was going to bear its fangs down on her one last time. It stopped. The creature had stopped moving. Something had forced the creature to not kill her. Fluttershy meekly stared at the creature, not understanding what was happening. It had the opportunity to kill her. Why wasn't it taking it? Her ears twitched as she heard the reason. Somewhere in the distance, a siren was going off. The dark creature before it began to disappear as if the siren had called it forth and summoned it back. The darkness that surrounded the creature's body seemed to burn up. The entire creature went up in a black fire before her. Disappearing before it could finish her, the music box ceased its hissing as the creature vanished, leaving her in the office by herself. A loud click could be heard before the sound of something crashed to the ground. Fluttershy's mind was hazed over. She could barely see. She couldn't understand what was going on, but she dragged herself over to where she heard the sound. Her body moved on its own now, without her guidance. Her body stepped on top of a platform. One she wasn't sure had been there when she entered the room. She felt her body collapse on top of it, laying herself down as she panted. The platform began to move. She wasn't sure how or why, but she didn't care. It was moving. It was taking her away from the hospital. The platform was moving into the ceiling through a dark path. She couldn't see what was around her, but she knew she wasn't around danger anymore. The pain was becoming real to her now. Her face came to her attention first. She could feel the swelling around her eye. She was probably also bleeding a lot from her face, but it was hard to tell. Her leg was no longer useful. Using it so heavily in her panicked state while it was injured, it had gone completely numb to her. She had probably done irreversible harm to it. It probably would never work the same way again. She could barely make out the blood pouring from it. Her wing. The creature had snapped her wing, broken it. She couldn't help but remark at that. Pegasus' wings were strong and sturdy. One could not normally break it with a twist of its head. They weren't like birds' wings that were fragile. They were strong enough to lift an entire body of a pony, but hers was now broken. She wasn't sure how and if it could be fixed or not. The one thing she knew about broken wings was that they could break two ways. One that they could be used again, or a way they'd never be usable again. There was very little in leeway.
Oh my god, how long is this chapter?
From what I saw, over 6,000 words. Her thoughts were distracted when the platform came to a stop. It had reached its destination. She panted heavily. Her body wanted to stay collapsed, absorb the pain that was trying to drive her mad. The only thing that was keeping her sane was the thoughts of what damage had been done to her and what she could do to fix it. But she knew she had to at least get up. If she didn't get up, she couldn't start fixing her wounds. She tried to stand up. She put energy into her legs, but they refused to stand her up. She carefully blinked her one usable eye, trying to open it more than it was, but it refused against her actions. She tried to flap her good wing, but it was pressed hard against the platform by her body. She panted. She was too tired to panic anymore. She was yelling at herself to get up, but her body was refusing now. Oh man, that was a good one, Pinkie giggled happily. Pinkie? Fluttershy's eye closed tightly, wanting to escape the pain with sleep, but she forced it open. Man, you pull the best pranks, Pinkie Pie, Rainbow Dash laughed alongside the pink pony. Her good front leg lifted weakly from her body as she very carefully placed her hoof against the ground. That was pretty funny, Fluttershy giggled, covering her mouth with her hoofs. Her legs started to lift from the front of her body up. Her body jerked in refusal, but she had herself up. Her back legs began to weakly move now. Man, nothing's keeping her up but sheer willpower. I told you you'd enjoy yourself, Fluttershy said, grinning, putting a hoof over Fluttershy's shoulder.
Rainbow Dash said, grinning.
Grinning. I said grinning.
No, but you said Fluttershy said, grinning, putting a hoof over Fluttershy's shoulder.
Oh, okay.
I corrected. Rainbow said, grinning.
Okay, putting a hoof over Fluttershy's shoulder. Her back legs slowly moved, placing their hooves against the ground. She lifted herself up. She was standing again. She could feel herself dripping. She was losing blood. It's all in good fun after all, Pinkie laughed, bouncing up to Fluttershy. After all, who doesn't love to share a good laugh? She grinned brightly. On 3 legs, she slowly began to walk. She didn't know where she was going yet, but she could feel the need to go forward. You're right. I'm still not sure why I'm that good at them, but I love doing them with you two, Fluttershy smiled happily. She loved being around her friends. They gave her such strength. She didn't know what she'd do without her friends.
I don't know how that feels.
Fluttershy stopped before a mirror. She could see herself now. She could see that the bruised half of her face was swelling around her eye, the maimed wing, the bleeding leg. She was a mess. With very careful precision, she dropped her saddlebag onto the ground, using her good hoof to open the bag and pull out a health drink. She very carefully swallowed its bare contents before placing it down. She then grabbed the bandages in the bag and very carefully began to wrap the wound on her leg. I think that's enough for one day. We should totally do this again, Rainbow Dash grinned at Fluttershy. Oh yes, I'd love to. Doing this again would make me happy. Fluttershy grinned happily. She could ask for nothing more than to spend another day with the loving care of her friends.
Well, that's a cliffhanger ending.
And that's the end of chapter 4.
Interesting ending.
Anyways, this is JTH,
Mr. Toaster Hero.
and we will see you in part 5.
Later.
Goodbye.